All right. Welcome back to the Triple Cross podcast. I am John, here with my co-hosts Casey and Quentin, aka Q, with the Superfly hat today. How you guys doing?
Superfly, dude.
Yeah, Superfly.
I'm
we're
feeling it
all
today.
we're all bringing our hat game today, but I think Q won the hat game.
Did I? Do you
I
like
think
my
so.
little
I mean,
pin?
Casey's probably biased towards the Niners hat, but
It's old reliable. I
Yeah,
haven't worked
right.
hours in this hat.
I
Reliable.
like how my hat. Mine's just gray with a blue stripe, no brand or anything, just plain.
That hat is working overtime.
All right. Well, today we've got more debates on NFL season leaders. Today we are going to cover who will lead the league in receiving yards this year, who will lead the league in rushing yards this year. We already did passing. If you haven't seen our episode on who we think will lead the league in passing yards in 2022, check it out. It is linked up above right now. Had a little bit of a debate there. We do have some scoring criteria. After each person makes their point, we end up scoring it. The other two guys kind of score the other person and decide how well we think they made their case, how well they defended their case, all of that. Right now, I think Casey's up by 2 points. I think he's got 13 and a half total points, and Q and I both have an 11 and a half total points, so we're tied for second. But today will be the decider of the rushing, receiving, passing trifecta, who wins this debate, right? On the Triple Cross podcast. Should we get into it?
Let's do it, boys.
Let's do it.
All right. What are we hitting first? We hitting rushing first? We hitting receiving first? What do you think?
Well,
receiving. Oh,
Let's
you
go
had
receiving.
the ticker ready. Casey knew.
I had the ticker ready to go, but I also had a little foreshadowing going on. My mistake. So anybody who was paying attention knows my pick for one of the things. We'll get to there. We'll get there.
Just took the wrong ticker. That's all right. We're not pros. It's our second one. All right. So, should I lead off receiving then?
Yeah, go ahead, John.
I will lead off receiving.
John, who is your pick for the passing or for the receiving yards leader in the NFL in the 2022-23 season?
Okay. My pick for the person who will lead in receiving yards in 2022 is Justin Jefferson. This is kind of a homer pick. I am a Vikings fan. That said, I'm not like over invested in the NFL. I'm very open to a different player leading receiving yards, but I actually just legitimately think Justin Jefferson will lead in receiving yards in 2022. Here is why. Number one, the Vikings are an overall balanced offense, and I think that will open up a lot of opportunities for him. He's not a single target, right, where there's nobody else that's going to get targeted. They also have a really strong running game with Dalvin Cook, and you can trust Kirk Cousins to do the right thing with the ball. He's not making dumb throws. He's not trying to force throws. I'm not saying he's Tom Brady, but he can do the right thing with the ball. He can get the ball to Justin Jefferson. Now, the downside to Justin Jefferson is that they do have such a strong run game that might take some yardage away from him. But ultimately, all I think that's going to do is I think Dalvin Cook will open up the pass. I don't think Dalvin Cook will lead in rushing yards. I think he'll have a fair amount of rushing yards, but he'll open up the pass. And then ultimately, what will happen is we'll get a lot of targets toward Justin Jefferson. The Vikings also have Adam Thielen, but Adam Thielen is more of a possessional target, and they don't really have any other deep targets that are going to go for big yards. So Adam Thielen might have plenty of touchdowns, plenty of first downs, but ultimately, I think Justin Jefferson leads the NFL in passing yards. Receiving yards in 2022.
All right. Q, you want to tear into John first?
I'll let you go first, Casey.
He's got nothing. It's because he's got nothing.
Okay, well, I'll go ahead and start with, I do believe it's smart to kind of get ahead of the arguments that you feel like are coming. So kudos to you, but also you didn't really do that justice, in my opinion. So the main problem with Justin Jefferson, who I do generally believe in, he's a great receiver. In fantasy, is he going to be one of the top 10 receivers? Absolutely. Top 5? Probably. Yeah, I would assume so. But are the Vikings really going to continue to pass the ball? And is Justin Jefferson going to be racking up receiving yards when they're winning games? Because they're actually a good team. They're not one of these teams that are going to be down every game of the season. They're not the Jags, right? They're not the Jaguars. Trevor Lawrence, if he busts out this year, he could set the world on fire because they're going to be down in some games, just That's the way the Jaguars do it. And he's going to be able to throw for like 400 yards a game if he really clicks, right? If he finds one stud receiver, that guy's going to rack up the yardage. So I do agree that Justin Jefferson is the alpha of the receiving core on his team. But if you got a guy like Dalvin Cook on your team at running back and you're winning the game and you're in the second half of the game, honestly, and with a defense like the Vikings generally have, what are you even doing airing the ball out? You should be taking care of the rock, running the ball, ground and pound. That said, I know their new OC is pretty big on a bigger passing offense. But when push comes to shove, in those heat of the battle moments, game time decision, when you are up by maybe 10 points or more, are you really going to chuck the ball up in the air? My guess is not as much. That will be Justin Jefferson's biggest downfall. And there's going to be so many receivers relevant to this kind of argument that there's a lot of opportunity for somebody to be ahead of him. That's why ultimately I do not think Justin Jefferson will be the receiving yards leader in 2022, 2023.
I hear you. I'll give you my rebuttal really quick, and then we can go to Q. Number one, I don't think they have a yardage target. I don't think, who do we got? KJ Osborne. I don't think he's like a really valid yardage target. And I think Adam Thielen is a possessional target. Number two, I don't see a whole lot of blowouts happening with them playing from the NFC North, right? And I do see a lot of game script going toward the pass. Now, yeah, I mean, there's some crappy teams in the NFC North, or just, I mean, they're going to play everybody, but yeah, I mean, I like in blowout situations, no. And yeah, is it an upside to always be down? But you're always down for a reason. And I think then when you're always down, it's a lot of those passes are getting dropped, or they're not getting to you, or the quarterback's not getting the ball off, right? Whereas Kirk Cousins is going to be protected. He's going to get the ball off. I think ultimately if you look at the Rams had a complete offense, they're not down, right? But Cooper Kupp still leads in receiving yards last year. I think it goes the same way. Now, the real question is Dalvin Cook, right? Does game script call for Dalvin Cook no more, or does it call for Justin Jefferson more? That's the question mark. I'm betting on Justin Jefferson. I know that you might be betting a different way there.
We shall see. Q, I believe this is your turn to deflate John's ego.
Yeah, I mean, if I'm honest, I'd say, I hate to be this guy, but Justin Jefferson's a really good pick. He's a good candidate, and I hate to agree, but he's a good candidate for sure. But I just think, he's never been that number one guy. I feel if he was gonna be that number one guy, 2021 was his year. He did really well in 2020. But I think he will probably end somewhere around the 1,500 mark. Whereas like you're gonna have guys like Stephon Diggs, probably somewhere in the top 5, or like I don't know what Devontae is gonna do this year, but probably not be in the top 5 with Derek Carr. Who knows? But like Jamari Chase, I would expect him to be up there as well. But yeah, we'll see. I just think he's just never been that number one guy. He's never been that number one guy. And I don't know, what the Vikings want to do this season in terms of passing. But I just think, I don't know. I would love to see.
I mean, look, if it's just anybody against the field, I'll take the field. But if I have to take one guy, I'm going to take Justin Jefferson. And I mean, that's the point of this. You took someone else. That's fine.
I did indeed.
Speaking of,
yeah, who's up? Q, you up. Tell us who you got.
Okay. All right. So when it comes to receiving, I think personally, I got to go with my guy, Cooper Kupp, and it's very simple because Cooper, my friend Cooper, almost broke the all-time the all-time receiving record last year. Second place in that, second place in all-time catches, second to Megatron. He may be less efficient, but I think, he got the most attempts, of course, and completions last season. And I think he's arguably one of the most skilled and clutch wide receivers in the league. right now. So people like to make the argument that, oh, he had a breakout season. Yeah, he had a breakout season, but I think, he's always been as skilled as he is. Um, and it's really just come down to, obviously the Rams isolating Cooper Kupp and like taking advantage of his skill. Granted, Matthew Stafford, he is dealing with some injuries, so hopefully everything is good there. But we'll see. I think if they get the ball to Cooper Kupp, he's going to deliver 9 times out of 10 all the time. So yeah.
All right. I'm just gonna go ahead and assume I got to be the first one to tear in here. I'm like the friggin' like the wedge guy on the kick, like the kickoff team. You got to like lead the charge.
Yeah.
Anyway, all right. So Cooper Kupp. If I'm being honest, nobody on this episode, you haven't seen my pick yet, but nobody on this episode has a bad pick. So I can't just be like, hey, great pick, Q. Like, pretty smart, right? You're playing the odds. He led last year. That was basically my case for Tom Brady. So I want to stay intellectually consistent. I don't want to pour salt on my previous arguments for Brady. So I got to tap dance a little here just to start. But I will say this. It is much less likely that a receiver actually repeats as the receiving yards leader. That happens very infrequently. And we know this because if you follow fantasy at all, like that's just, there's been a new wide receiver one for, I want to say almost 10 years running. I can't remember who the last person was who did it, honestly. It's been a minute. It probably was AB would be my guess back when he was like a Steeler, when he was real tough on the Steelers. So that's probably my main point of the argument. It's going to be tough for Kupp to repeat the year. And one of the reasons why is because defenses are going to be gunning for him for sure. Can they stop him? Probably not very efficiently, no. But I don't think he's going to tear through defenses quite as hard as he did last year. He's going to have a lot of yardage. Is he going to be number one? Like John said, I'd take the field over any one man. But I would not take Kupp because I think he's going to catch a lot of double teams. I think Stafford is, while he's a good quarterback, I don't believe he's a top tier quarterback in the league right now. So I'm going to go ahead and just leave it there, I think. I'm going to say Cooper Kupp, smart pick. Not my favorite to win this category.
Wait,
Yeah,
can I
go ahead, Q. Go ahead. Yep.
All right. So I understand your argument of, saying that usually it doesn't happen of two people, getting back-to-back years of top receiving. That's a fair argument. And I hate to be that guy and be like, who's to say it can't happen now? But, if just looking at trends in the past, like guys like Antonio Brown and Julio Jones, like, every like going back and forth, every other year, they're like, and usually in those situations, like it was like Antonio Brown, Julio Jones. I think there was one year it was like Ty Hilton, and then there's like Antonio Jones, Julio Jones.
Yeah, I got
Antonio Brown, Julio Jones, back to back. So the variability of all of that together, I think, is very possible for a receiver to get back-to-back years. And considering, what he did last year, I don't expect him to go above that 1,900 mark. But I think if he finishes above like 1,700, 1,800, which he's already like, he can do that. Like it's very, very possible for him to do that. He'll be in a good position for sure to get number one.
Yeah. Here's why I like your pick, Q. The Rams don't have much of a run game, in my opinion. Although, Casey might have fleeced you on that Cam Akers trade, but in fantasy, but
Sure,
I don't think they have much of a run game. So they do air it out. And I don't think, he is far and away like head and shoulders above the other targets on the team. Right. So he's going to get a lot of targets. They're going to throw the ball a lot. And I see Matt Stafford. I don't know if I'm ready to call Matt Stafford elite, right? He did win a Super Bowl. That's fine. And I'm not going to say he's overrated by any means, but he's really only had 1 year in a system where he wasn't going to just be sacked, within a second and a half. So I'm not ready to call him elite, but I would put him in a similar category to Kirk Cousins. I can trust him to do the right thing with the ball. So that's why I like your pick. However, I think that the repeater argument isn't necessarily as good as the defense's argument. Last year, defenses were not ready for Matt Stafford to actually be good. They were not ready for Cooper Kupp to actually be a threat. I think the two of them picked up a lot of receiving and passing yards on essentially just being a surprise that defenses weren't ready to prep for. In their division, what are they? AFC West? Is that right?
NFC West.
Yeah, NFC West, right. So in their division, NFC West, we've got Chargers, we've got Niners, and we've got who else? Raiders, right?
Nope. We have Niners, Seahawks, and Cardinals with the Rams.
Niners, Seahawks. Okay. NFC West, Chargers are AFC West. That's right. And Raiders are AFC West. Sorry. I thought they were in the AFC
It's pretty
West.
close. You had like half of them, right? That was...
Yeah. So Seahawks, Cardinals, Chargers, Seahawks, Cardinals, Niners. There's just better defenses there. And this is actually part of the reason I chose Justin Jefferson, is because the defenses are a little bit weak in the NFC North, but the teams are okay. So I don't think the Vikings will be like way up. But I think they will have they'll be high scoring games. I don't see, that like the Niners not being ready for Cooper Kupp. You know what I mean? I don't say, and I think that those games where they play those teams twice, like that's going to hurt his yardage. So ultimately, I kind of think what you think about Justin Jefferson. He'll end with quite a few yards. He'll have a great season, but he'll be, number 5, number 3, something like that. I think the defense are going to be too ready for him to be in that number 1 spot.
Okay.
Rebuttal?
No rebuttal.
Okay. I mean, no. What you said definitely makes sense.
Except for the whole
I think
divisional thing there.
Yeah, except for I had like half of the AFC West and the NFC West mixed up. Yeah.
I think, like you said, it just really comes down to, Stafford. Like it really does. Like the running game is not significant whatsoever. And Cooper Kupp is undeniably the best
He's good
wide receiver on the team. But it just comes down to getting him the ball. If they can get him the ball, if they can get the ball in a general direction of wherever he's going to catch it. So that's just easy yardage right there. But it's just going to come down to, if they can do it or not. And if Matthew Stafford's on board with that, then Cooper Kupp's going to sail to the number 1 spot.
I mean, if Nick Bosa sacks Matt Stafford 4 times a game, 2 games this season, that's a lot less throws that go Cooper Kupp's way. But who knows? I mean, that is actually one of the main like scripts over the season that'll be interesting, is like, how good is Matt Stafford really? Like he's got to prove it right now.
Mm-hmm. I think if we get Cooper Kupp 10 receptions a game, that's all he really needs, honestly. Like his efficiency, it's already really solid. That yardage per reception solid. So I think 10 receptions a game, he'll cruise through it. That'll get him like 1,700 minimum, I think, at the end of the season. But we'll see.
We'll see. Yeah, we shall see. So this one is definitely closer than the quarterbacks one. I think in the quarterbacks one, Casey had the clear favorite, and the other two of us were trying to make some weird outside argument to get one. Do we want to do scoring now? Or do we want to wait till the end, boys?
Well, I have to go still.
Okay. Oh yeah, that's right. We don't even know Casey. Yeah, let's just remove Casey from this round. He doesn't even get to.
I already won, right? So like.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. Receiving yards 2022-2023 season, Casey, who you got?
All right. My pick to lead receiving yards for this season is Deebo Samuel. Okay, so I tried not to step on my own arguments trying to tear apart your two, because I think there's some actual like commonalities between especially Cooper Kupp and Deebo Samuel. Last year, they were neck and neck for receiving yards leader up until about 2/3 of the way through the season, when Deebo basically became the de facto RB1 for the Niners, right? Like he had to spend a good amount of the snaps in the backfield, right? And his target share in the offense went down because he's getting carries. This year, not going to be the case, at least not to that extent. He's going to get some touches out of the backfield, but they're going to let him play receiver more because they won't need him as much. We've got a stout RB room in San Francisco. So Deebo Samuel is going to just set the world on fire like he did last year, right alongside Cooper Kupp. They were neck and neck the whole year. They're both yak monsters. I wanted so hard to say, Q, that Julio Jones and Antonio Brown were both like alpha outside receivers, but Cooper Kupp is this like mostly slot guy who lives off yak. I didn't want to say that because that's the new version of the NFL. You rack up yardage based off yak. And that's what Debo is going to do. He was the only one ahead of Kupp while he was still a pure receiver. As soon as he became running back, he got some like lower value touches and targets to where his yak per catch came down, and Kupp passed him in that category. So based off the fact that as a receiver, Debo is actually the most efficient at getting yards after the catch, that'd be the main point in my argument here. It would be remiss for me not to also touch on the quarterback situation. Jimmy Garoppolo was a fine quarterback. He would be on par with like a Kirk Cousins maybe in talent, but he definitely doesn't air it down the field. So what's going to be nice with Trey Lance, there's going to be some inconsistencies. He's essentially a rookie. He's a second-year player, but it's his first year starting. He will be able to air the ball out. In the limited sample size we saw last year, he hit Debo downfield multiple times in just the 2-3 games he appeared in. So Debo won't have to live off yak quite as much. He's still going to be the most efficient on those short passes, but he'll also be able to sprinkle in those deep passes, and he won't have to go line up in the backfield nearly as much this year. That is why Debo Samuel is going to lead the NFL in receiving yards 2022/2023 season.
Okay. I categorically disagree with the statement that Jimmy Garoppolo is on level with Kirk Cousins. I do not think it's close. Now that makes your argument, like, because there's a better chance Trey Lance will be better, but I don't think that we can put those two in the same category personally. Like, I just think Kirk Cousins is better at taking care of the ball and taking care of business, and is like better at actually making something happen. Like Jimmy G's kind of a game manager to me, but that's not what we're talking about right now. It's not what we're arguing. Debo Samuel, I love as a player. So actually all the people who we're talking about, I actually really like them as players. Here's my issues with Debo. One, I have a hard time picking somebody. I mean, we all essentially picked the most likely person on our favorite team here. I have a hard time picking someone to win something like, the receiving yards title with a new quarterback. It's just too big of a question mark to me, right? Like Trey Lance, I like, what I see, but still too big of a question mark. Other issue is I do think Debo will get a lot of his touches on like handoffs and pitches. I think he will lead all receivers in rushing yards this year. I also think that like Debo and Cooper Kupp, like you said, there's a lot of parallels there, but Cooper is like head and shoulders above in terms of like number one target, whereas the Niners have another very significant target in George Kittle. And I know that he's questionable right now, but like that's another like really significant target. Now it's a little bit an argument against what I said, because it's like, well, that was the problem with the Vikings, but it's another significant receiving target is the issue, I think. So yeah, I mean, that would be why I would not choose Debo. Although, yeah, like you said, we all three have good picks. I like Debo as a player. I love how he's a beast. The other thing that we kind of stay away from like the injury argument a lot, though I'm sure we might get into it in running backs. The other issue with Debo is the fact that he's taking handoffs, pitches. He's essentially a running back sometimes. I think increases his risk of injury or increases his risk of at least missing a game or two here or there.
Then you don't know Debo. All right, real quick. Got a point for point here. Tear him down. If Kirk Cousins is that much better than Jimmy Garoppolo, where is the success in the playoffs for his team? He's loaded with guys like Justin Jefferson, Adam Thielen, good defense. If Kirk Cousins was as good as Jimmy, where are his NFC championships appearances?
Okay, if we measure,
my turn to tear down the rebuttal.
Yeah. No, if we measure,
Jimmy has been to two NFC championship games in fewer seasons than Kirk Cousins has started, and he won one of them. Appeared in the Super Bowl. We all know how that turned out.
Trent Dilfer has a Super Bowl ring, so
it's true. But I mean, Kirk Cousins is the lowest man on the totem pole on his own team as the quarterback. It seems it's the only thing you can point at least. But anyway, and then the current quarterback, Trey Lance. The chalk thing to say is what you said. I get it. But people could have said the same thing about Patrick Mahomes, who sat for a year behind a QB1 on his team in Kansas City until he came out and he did set the world on fire. Am I saying Trey Lance is going to come out, set the world on fire, and be the next Patrick Mahomes this year? Maybe, yeah. No, but I'm not. He doesn't even have to be to give Debo that. Debo can be what Tyreek Hill was and more, because you talk about like other targets on the offense. George Kittle, I love him. He's a hell of a player to watch. One of the best attitudes in the game. He's got that like try hard mentality. But the thing about Kittle is he gets featured in certain matchups, and then he kind of disappears. If you've had him in fantasy, that's what he does. He explodes, wins you a week, then he kind of disappears a little bit. And he's going to miss games. I don't think he's played a whole season, his whole career yet. And you talk about the parallel with Kansas City. If Trey Lance is anywhere near Patrick Mahomes, George Kittle is not going to have as many receptions and receiving yards as Travis Kelce most years, because Travis Kelce doesn't miss games. So the parallel to like Tyreek Hill with Debo, I think is strong. I think that's what we're going to see this year. And also, it would also be remiss of me to not mention that I think you guys kind of took the chalkier picks in this round, where Debo might not even be in most people's top fives for this category. So I'm going out on the limb here. I think I deserve the benefit of the doubt on the difficulty of argument.
Yep.
And I think the reason why people are sleeping on Debo in this kind of capacity is largely because the contract situation was lingering into the preseason. So in like fantasy drafts, he's a round 2 pick. His ADP never really launched back up, but by talent and by what we saw last year, Debo's a round 1 receiver. He should be in this discussion, should at least be in the top 5. I think he'll be number 1.
I do agree that your difficulty of argument, you definitely gain points there. If we're just having the debate of who's most likely, we got to take one guy versus the field. Of the 3 of ours, I would take Debo last, but that's kind of your point, is that most people would. Q, what do you got?
So, difficulty of argument, I think you're solid there. But I just don't know that Debo Samuel is that guy to get number 1 this year at all. And, just kind of like taking a look at last year's stats, I think the 49ers are really going to struggle with Debo Samuel, because I think he is tied for fumbles. I think he's tied with Austin Eckler. So, and that's out of all receivers in the league, I'm pretty sure. So, they're both tied at like 4 or something like that, which is definitely a red flag. I think, and I think that's part of the reason why 49ers had him in the backfield for a bit, just because of those struggles. He's 60% receiving rate, which is that's not that great. But yeah, like, I mean, he's definitely getting targets for sure. He got targets last year. Who's to say it's not going to be the same this year? But I think there's just a whole bunch of red flags that kind of like signify that he still needs a little bit more development, maybe, or maybe just, a different quarterback or something. I don't know. But
the arguments about sorry, go ahead.
Well, I know the arguments about Debo, but I'm just saying, like,
we gotta let Casey take, reboot your points. Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you. I actually think you did me a bunch of favors here with trying to tear down my argument, because I don't think it hurts me to mention that Austin Eckler is a running back, for one, not a receiver. So he's outside of the conversation that we're talking about, for one. But using the stats that you presented here, why did Austin Eckler and Debo Samuel maybe lose the ball more than other people on a volume basis over the season? That'd be because they had the most touches. Debo Samuel had way more touches than anybody else last year in this argument that we're talking about, because he ran the ball. And you're going to tell me that it's equal the opportunity to fumble when you're having to run through 300-pound linemen? Like, obviously you're going to fumble more often than when you're battling a 215-pound at tops DB 40 yards down the field. Plus, you have to catch the ball first to even fumble it. So Debo automatically had possession in so many more offensive plays. Therefore, of course, he's going to fumble more often. So I think you're kind of adding to my point, because they're not going to run him as much as last year. I already addressed that in my main point. They won't need him to this much. And he just got paid. They're not putting that dude in the backfield as much. He's got some rushing incentives, but those incentives, if you look at them, they're not even like where he hit last year. They're expecting him to get maybe a couple carries a week, and he's mostly going to be the alpha receiver on the team. So I think maybe you helped my argument, if I'm being honest, because Debo's a workhorse, and I think the one thing that you say you might need more development, I don't know that anybody could make a good case that he's not the most dangerous man with the ball in his hands in the NFL. He's the best yak guy on the planet. So
The argument.
Eh,
What are you gonna say?
Wait, hold on.
Are you gonna say
Second to who, though?
Do you say categorically against other receivers or including running backs in that?
everybody in the NFL. He was leading in yak until he had to become a running back. When he became a running back, he basically led the NFL. I mean, I don't have the stats in front of me, but I would bet my left nut that Debo also, once he became a running back, had the highest yards per carry as a running back because he was ripping off like
So what if they
30-yard
decide?
touchdowns like on the regular. So
So what
when
if
he's
they
a
decide to
receiver,
put him
he
in the
leads
running
yards
back
after the
again?
catch. When he's a running back, he leads in yards per attempt. He's the most dangerous man with the ball in his hands. Like
So this is someone that you sound like is unsure is even going to be a receiver for this season.
I don't know where you got that in my argument at all.
Well, I
I've
mean, we
dispelled that
keep talking
multiple
about him being a running back. Like, is he
No,
going to be a
I'm talking
running
about
back?
the
Is he going to be
efficiency with the ball in his hands. He can take a 3-yard pass and house it for 70 yards, as we've seen him do. That's what he does.
Okay, but I'm specifically talking about, if we're gonna go into last year's stats specifically, I'm talking about receiving stat line. I'm not talking about him rushing and getting fumbles. I'm talking about receiving and getting fumbles. That's what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about anything else. Like,
I'm saying if you look at touches, which would be like completed passes, receptions, plus carries, Debo Samuel had so many more than anybody else we're talking about today. So many more than any other receiver in the league. So I think it wouldn't be looking at the full picture to say he fumbles more often just on a volume basis, just like Austin Eckler, who also probably had top 2 in touches for an offensive team. Like those guys handle the ball the most. They're going to fumble. And what does it say about their skill level that even when they fumble, the team is like, we just keep doing that.
We don't have another option.
Yeah, but I'm talking about, I understand your argument, but I'm just talking about receiving fumbles.
Receiving fumble.
Like,
You're specifically talking about receiving.
and
yeah,
so he led in receiving.
Austin Eckler's getting touches, I'm talking about them passing him the ball and then him fumbling it. Not like them passing it off to him and he's running it and then fumbling it.
Regardless of any other stats you want to point to, while Debo Samuel was a pure receiver, I want to say it was through like week 10, maybe week 11 last year. That's right about the time he had to become a running back. He was right there, tit for tat with Cooper Kupp all season long. And it's just, it's irresponsible for people not to be at least bringing him into the conversation where Cooper Kupp is, because had he been a receiver the whole year, there's nothing to point to that said he wouldn't have been right along with Kupp the whole way. They were literally back and forth all year. But the one thing Debo was ahead on was yards after the catch, which I think he is the superior yards after the catch receiver in this debate. I would plant a flag. I would say he's the number one for sure.
He's second. He's second to Cooper Kupp for sure. And Cooper Kupp is also definitely far more efficient than he is at 75%. Receiving rate, whereas like I said, Debo Samuel's at that 60%. So I think he has a lot to work on, a lot of game to develop. He's a good wide receiver, don't get me wrong. I just don't think he can be that number one guy. And
Cooper
I don't
Kupp gets a lot of opportunities in the game, catches a lot of passes, no doubt, but nobody was featured in an offense as much as Debo Samuel, full stop, last year. He just wasn't. He had so many more touches. How many passes are you going to catch if you're involved as a ball carrier on over half of the plays in the offense for a whole year, basically? Like, you're going to drop more passes. You're going to be tired, and they're still feeding him the rock. The game plan is give the ball to Debo because people can't tackle this man.
Yeah, I mean, like I was saying, Cooper Kupp finished the season with the most targets, I'm pretty sure, and the most receptions. So it's a tough one. And I think, my question is, let's say that Debo, is a receiver this whole season. If he gets that volume, is he going to produce a 60%? Because a 60% will not get him to number one, if I'm honest with you. If he gets, let's say he gets 200 targets this year, is he going to do 60%? Or is he going to, have a higher efficiency there? But all I know, if he's in the 60s, he's not going to be number one.
Check those stats again for weeks 1 through 10. That's all I'll say. And we can move on because you got to expect efficiency to go down with volume.
So
Okay.
I mean, to me, I think the argument against Debo and the argument against Cooper that I would make, and I didn't even say anything about the defense or whatever, like didn't make the same argument against. They're like really similar, the two arguments against. I would give in terms of like who do I think is going to have more receiving yards? I would say Cooper Kupp because of a few things, like how much more he is probably the number one receiving target on his team. That said, that probably makes Debo the more difficult argument to make. So let's move on to scoring. How do you guys want to score me first since I went first? So remembering that what we're scoring on is difficulty of argument, how difficult was the person that we chose, how right we are, like how likely are we to actually be right about it, and then how good our argument was.
All right. You want to grade first, Q? You want to set the standard here?
Yeah, so it's out of 10.
So it's a score out of 10 total based on those criteria.
Blended score based off of those 3 criteria.
Yeah.
Okay. John, will give you a 6.5.
Okay. What was good about it? What wasn't good about it? What did I score points in?
Actually, I will give you a 7. I'm sorry. And let me tell you why. I think, the Justin Jefferson argument, with what you said, it makes sense and I agree with it. Difficulty of argument, I think, he's obviously never been number 1, but he's always been, well, not always, but like the past couple of years, he's been right there. I think it's very situational this season, but if there's any season for him to do it, I think it's going to be one of the next 2 seasons. It's going to be either this season or next season that he could do it. But yeah, that's kind of like my thing on that. But yeah.
All right, what do you got me at, Casey?
This might be controversial, but I didn't like your argument. I think that I'm just looking through the criteria. Difficulty of argument. Either you or Q had the easiest argument by a mile. Honestly, I think this isn't a fantasy proper show, but like this particular argument, these kinds of like counting stats, who's going to get the most yards, it essentially is fantasy becomes extremely relevant. So where do people have receivers ranked? I mean, Cooper Kupp and Justin Jefferson are the top 2 on almost anybody's list who means anything in the fantasy community. But what we saw kind of over the offseason is, for whatever reason, Justin Jefferson rising up into the number 1 spot on more and more experts' lists. And I think there's a lot of reasons why that is, because he is a good pick for this, for sure. But I didn't get that in your argument, one. And I think counter to what Q and I did, which is have to lean into Yak a little bit more, because that's kind of how Debo and Cooper Kupp make their living for yardage, is catch the ball, then run. I think average depth of target is probably quite a bit. I don't know the numbers off the top of my head, but confident it's quite a bit larger for Justin Jefferson, which means every reception he gets, he's already collected more yards without even taking another step after he secures the ball, right? Because he's a little bit more of a deep threat. That he's the best deep threat out of these 3 receivers. No argument from me on that. And actually, I think that the other thing is you kind of conceded that, like, yeah, maybe he does have like some better like surrounding weapons, like Adam Thielen. Adam Thielen is old, like I think
he's a situational target. That's what I said.
I think you could have battled that even harder, though. I think you could have I would have maybe gone a little more into hot takesville and gone, Adam Thielen's fallen off this year. Adam Thielen's not going to surpass 450 yards receiving, because so many more are going to go to JJ. JJ is going to light the world on fire. I think he's got a great shot. Honestly, if I was to pick between your 2 picks, I would probably pick Justin Jefferson as more likely. So based off that, I think it's a good pick, or a good chance for him to win. I think you could have done a little bit more with your argument. So those things blended together. I'm stuck between 2 things. I think, yeah, I'm going to lean into this. I'm going to go 5.5. 5.5.
Okay. All right, moving on to Q. Q's argument for Cooper Kupp. I think I guess choosing the reigning champ probably has to decrease your difficulty of argument if I'm being honest, right? But also probably has to increase your likelihood of being right. So I would say those two wash each other in this situation. How good was the argument that you made? Yeah, I mean, I guess I actually think you made a better case for Cooper Kupp when you were arguing against Deebo Samuel, honestly. Like, if I could include that part in your argument for Cooper Kupp, I'm like, yeah, that was better.
Wait,
Like,
grading criteria here. Wait, is that not involved at all? I mean,
I
I
don't,
assume basically
yeah, I mean,
everything's up
we
to
haven't
this
really
point.
defined it, but like in Q's sort of 1 minute that he had to make the case for Cooper Kupp, I don't think the argument was all that strong. Like, it was more like, dude, this guy's, he's on the come up. Which, I mean, I don't say that it's a wrong argument. It's just not like a super strong argument. But when you're arguing against Deebo Samuel, I think you made some really
I
great
mean,
points for Cooper Kupp.
there's also just no context in like the 60 seconds because like you're stuck to just talking about that one receiver.
I'm fine with including everything up to the grade.
Okay, all right.
Yeah,
So
I mean,
in that case, I actually think you've made some great points for Cooper Kupp when you're arguing against Deebo Samuel. So I'm going to probably give you some points there, and I'm going to give you overall because difficulty of in likelihood of being right. I think the difficulty of argument. I don't know if they quite wash each other out. I'm going to give you a 6 because I would have liked to seen a little bit better like argument when you were just making your case. If you'd have made a little better argument there, then I'd have you at a 7. What you got, Casey?
Yeah. Okay. I don't need to go as long into this. The reasoning why you made a lot of the points for me here. Cooper Kupp is, whether or not I believe he's the most likely to be it, he is the easiest selection. He's the most chalk answer for sure. Just being the one last year. I do agree with John that you made probably a better case not during your turn and some of your rebuttal points. But I also feel like that helped my case. So I don't know how to weigh that for you because I think that everything you said about Yak or anything like that, we have similar types of receivers. So it's tough for us to not stomp on our own arguments a little bit. Both good defenses too, which we've talked about. Anyway, so based off these things, I'm going to go with 6. I think you had a better argument than John. You know what? Actually, yeah, I'm gonna stay at 6. I think 6 is the right answer here.
I don't know if this is worth anything extra or whatever. I actually give you the point of the day on the reception rate, right? Like Cooper Kupp's reception rate versus Deebo Samuel is one of the best arguments you made for Cooper Kupp when someone else here thinks it's going to be Deebo. So I do think you had the point of the day.
I'm gonna switch. I'm gonna say 6.5. Not just
because I was actually just about to. I was like, maybe I think it's 6.5. I give him a half a point for that.
If you guys both want to give me 6.5s, it's okay. Like y'all can.
No, you can
part
flip
of why
it. I was already locked in.
I think we're factoring too many things almost, but I'm like up to the point of where I'm grading. Maybe I shouldn't be, but I'm like, John gave you a 6. I do feel like if I give you a 6, that's like a little salty. Like I think you deserve 12.5 points is what I'm after here. I think, and I don't mind giving you a better grade than John. I think last time we were a little bit more combative in our takes, and yeah, you made a good argument. So
yeah, all right. Q, Casey's argument for Deebo. What do you give it?
No, you have to go first for that one.
Oh, did I just not go first for you though? Or did you have to go first for me too? You did.
Well,
all right,
I'll go first. Went first.
No. Oh, okay.
I had to go first in all the rebuttals though.
Casey never went first. So all right. So I'll go first on Q. I'll go first on Q. On Casey. You have the most difficult argument. I think you made a good argument, like a creative argument for it. I also think this is you probably have like the best choice for winning the format of this podcast because you have the most difficult argument, but you also, of the people who are difficult arguments, probably have the most likely to be right of those. Like if there's anyone who's like the dark horse that probably will do it, it's probably Deebo. So yeah, I think that you get a lot of points there. And your argument was good. Like obviously you followed the NFL maybe definitely more closely than I do, maybe more closely than Q as well. I would have loved to see a rebuttal to the reception point. So like where I gave Q a point there, I'd probably take a point away from you.
Remember, I said that the efficiency drops when he had to become a running back. I want to see that. I want to see that
I get
stat
you.
for weeks 1 through 10 when he's a pure receiver.
Yeah, I get you. It was okay, but what, like, we don't know. Like, it's an okay point, but what if it was the same? We don't actually know. So, anyway, yeah, I think I'd give you a 7. I'd give you a 7. I'd actually give you a 7.5.
He was beside himself.
Oh my.
So the main thing is, even if your argument was average, which I think it was average or slightly above average, the combination of how, like, you chose a more difficult person, and like you probably chose, you're not completely unlikely to be right either.
I mean, I think the dark horse comment, the reason why, if there's a dark horse is going to win, it's going to be Deebo, because he shouldn't be a dark horse. Like, that's just the reality of it. Thank you. And Q.
All right, look, Casey. You know I love you, but
Well, I know.
This is a divisional argument right now between.
Difficulty of your argument is there, but sometimes you and John be sounding a little contradictory when you guys are like, "Oh, Cooper Kupp was, last season number 1, meaning this season he's not gonna get it," and then you guys are like, "Oh, well, this is an easy argument. He was number 1 last year, meaning you're probably right. He might be number 1 this year." And then you guys are like saying that back and forth. And I'm just like, okay, now you're making my life difficult because now I have to argue against that. So I think that basis alone for me is like the most difficult, meaning Deebo Samuel is nothing between the fact that I got to argue against Deebo Samuel and Justin Jefferson. But not only that, I got to argue against the fact that Cooper Kupp was number 1 last season. So with that being said, I think your argument, what you said in your 60 seconds was solid. It made sense, but I just think I'm adamant that I don't agree that Deebo Samuel can be number 1 this season. Just granted, looking at what happened last season, I'm just not confident in the fact that he would be able to be better than either Justin Jefferson or Cooper Kupp this season. Which should
be factored in if that's what you think. Obviously, that should be factored in heavily.
And then another thing that I felt like you didn't really touch on and have a rebuttal for was the fact that he's so inefficient. It was just kind of like you just kind of you were focusing on the fact that I had said something about fumbles, and you were assuming that I was talking about like rushing fumbles when I was talking specifically about receiving fumbles. So for that alone, I kind of feel like it definitely docked you a couple points on my scale for sure. So I'm unfortunately gonna have to give you a 5.
A 5. That's spicy.
Yeah,
real spicy.
That was just an equalizer right there.
That
was an equalizer grade all the way.
That's not an equalizer grade.
Either way, Casey's still up too, even if we all tie on this.
I know he's still up. After you just gave him after you almost just gave him a 10, I know.
Almost a 10. It was a 7.5, just to keep it in check. And also, I feel like you have some selective hearing going on. I feel like I definitely spoke to the efficiency based off the fact that his volume went through the roof. Just usage of Deebo Samuel went through the roof. So with more volume, efficiency usually suffers. It's the way of the world. But yeah, hey.
No, but okay.
That's sorry, where we are.
I want to say though, I can't get flack for having the dark horse pick here, what you guys think is the dark horse pick. No. When last week you guys were like, well, you just took the most obvious answer. I've been on both sides here now. It can't benefit me both ways. So
I'm not faulting you for that because, like I said, Cooper Kupp, once again, and it's not even selective hearing at all. Cooper Kupp, once again, had the most volume and had probably some of the highest efficiency in the league reception rate. Whereas Deebo Samuel had probably in the top 10, the lowest targets, and was also like one of the least efficient. So I understand, like, ideally with more volume, you get more inefficient, but that wasn't the case for Cooper Kupp. That was the case for Deebo Samuel. And he also had lower volume, like significantly lower volume.
Not true, because I've made this point already, but he had way more volume than Cooper Kupp as a touch base.
But
I'm talking about receiving only.
Q is isolating receiving.
But what I mean is those receptions you go get when you've been taking every snap in the backfield, when you've just taken 5 carries maybe in a row, being hit by defensive linemen. Now go out there and run like a 40-yard, like go out.
But we don't. I get what you're saying, but we don't live in a world where we could. There's the only way we can try and look at his receiving efficiency, right? If you're going to give it that quality, we don't live in a world where it's like, well, what is it? What is it in weeks 1 through 10? Is what you're saying?
I know it's not. I know it's hard to account for. I'm just saying, like, it's not a non-factor. So just the fact we can't account for it doesn't mean it's not a factor. Yeah. So that'd be my only thing on that. But yeah,
that's receiving yards. So through receiving yards, through passing yards, Casey is up 2 points. He had 13.5 in the first round. Q and I both had 11.5 in the receiving yards round. Q, all three of us had 12.5. I don't know what those totals are. Mental math is hard. But Casey's up 2 points. I know that. Going into rushing yards, we could pick up the pace a little bit, I think. Yep, let's do this thing. So moving into rushing yards. Who do we got first? Who's up first on rushing yards? Who's bold? Who's
I think
brave?
it's me.
It is. Let me. Yeah, it is you, Q.
Okay. All right, go for it. Take it away whenever you're ready.
So my pick in the 2022 NFL Draft, JK, rushing yards 2022, I think is going to be Jonathan Taylor. I think he's notorious for being super efficient. I think 2021 he had most efficient yards per attempt. Obviously most skilled last year, undoubtedly. He can take the load that the Colts are giving him, and they're definitely going to need him this year. Passing, I just don't think it's the very best. It's that definitely is like a scary rushing team with Jonathan Taylor in the backfield. So Marcus Brady, another person that I think is really going to depend on JT going forward this year. And Matt Ryan and JT are going to be an interesting combination, I think. Matt Ryan, he's aged for sure, but I think his throwing game isn't what it used to be. So I think he's going to depend on JT to really do his thing. So yeah, we'll see what happens, but I think it'll just be another solid year for JT going forward.
Yeah, I'll get into it first. I wish I could make a defensive argument here. I can't, because I actually chose someone from the same division because I think the defenses are soft in that division, personally. So yeah, it's a good argument. Matt Ryan's I would call him he's in the lower half of the league as a passer, in my opinion. And he doesn't have any like really, really great receiving targets. So Taylor's going to get a lot of touches. I'm making all your arguments for you.
Great job, John.
Really, at the end of the day, the only argument I really have against Taylor is I kind of don't think it's going to be him if I have to take one guy against the field on volume. I think he'll get decent volume, but I think there are running backs who are going to get 10, 15% more touches than him. Not a lot, but a few more carries. So Taylor's going to do it on yards per carry, which he is very efficient, like you said, but like just the pure number of touches, I think just won't be there for Taylor. And that's really my only argument against him. Okay.
I get to make a rebuttal, right?
You need one there.
Who is going to get more volume than Jonathan Taylor himself after the season that he just had? Like, I'm just curious, like, why wouldn't he get the most volume out of any? And you've already said that his Matt Ryan's passing is in the bottom half of the league right now. So where else would they be looking to in terms of volume of actually getting the ball out there? Like who?
Well, I
Who?
specifically, I mean, I'm not going to give away my pick, but I specifically think there is at least one running back who's going to get more touches.
Okay, I'll hold off for that one because I'm curious.
Okay, my turn. John. Well, sorry, Q. John, actually, first of all, I think you did a terrible job turning down that argument. That was if anything, you supplied more ammunition to Q there, which Jonathan Taylor needs.
Don't hate.
No more.
I don't have a lot of arguments against Jonathan Taylor.
No, Jonathan Taylor doesn't need any help with the argument because Jonathan Taylor is the most obvious pick here. I think that's fair to say. He went number 1 in 50% of fantasy drafts across the planet, probably. So, and I actually disagree with John's teardown that Taylor won't have just like top tier volume. I actually think he's probably going to have the most volume on a rushing basis, at least on rushing attempts, because he is uber talented. But no more adding to your your freaking argument here. Matt Ryan is not washed. All right, we're talking about a former MVP. Just to be clear, I don't know if you know that Matt Ryan has won an MVP before as a passer. That's what he does. He passes the ball. He's had no weapons since Julio Jones left the Falcons, and even like, let's be real, the last like year, maybe 2 that he had Julio on the Falcons, that's not like the Julio we know and love. That was the back half of his career Julio. No disrespect, but anyway. He didn't really have anybody else. I mean, Matt Ryan made Russell Gage look like a superstar for a while, right? He made guys like Calvin Ridley look like they're setting the world on fire. What's the common denominator? It's Matt Ryan. He's a great quarterback. He is older in his career, but quarterbacks can do it, man. Quarterbacks can do it late. Tom Brady is 45. Last year was 44, and he was arguably the best quarterback in the league. So I am not talking shit on Matt Ryan, on the GOAT Matt Ryan. No, just kidding. And just to add a little more fuel to the passing offense for the Colts, they haven't traditionally been much of a passing offense, but last year they had Carson fucking Wentz, man. Like Carson Wentz, arguably the worst starting quarterback in the league. All right, massive upgrade to Matt Ryan. No matter how you see him, Carson Wentz is worse. That's just, I'll die on that hill. Happy to. And I'm calling for a breakout season for wide receiver 1 on that team, Michael Pittman. He's a stud. If you don't think he's a stud, you haven't watched any tape on him. He's absolutely a freak athlete. He's going to get a ton of opportunity. And to clear something up about the volume thing that we had just on the receiver talk, I don't just grade like volume. I think opportunity is a much better category to weigh these things on, because that doesn't perfectly align with volume. So Jonathan Taylor is going to get his fair share of opportunity. He's a great pick, but I don't know if he'll be number 1. We'll see.
Okay. My rebuttal to that is I heard a lot about quarterbacks. This argument is about Jonathan Taylor. Second of all, Matt, I have to address it at this point. Matt Ryan is washed. And like you said, Jonathan Taylor is too skilled and is going to get that volume. And that's the greatest argument you could have possibly made for me. Honestly, that just completes it right there. If he's skilled enough to get the volume, he's gonna deliver. So he's just gonna have another season at the top. And if we're looking at their depth chart, I just feel not too much talent besides Jonathan Taylor there.
I'll try not to even argue with you, but I want to ask you quick questions. 1, fine. Let's say Matt Ryan is washed. Is a washed Matt Ryan it's still an upgrade over Carson Wentz from last year?
I mean, listen, Carson Wentz led the Eagles. Listen, Carson.
The Eagles. This is going to be the argument for Carson Wentz. He played like 3 good games in his whole
y'all
career.
See what Q's all about.
No, I mean,
lying left and right to make his case.
He played like 3 good games in his whole career. Like,
did the Eagles win a Super Bowl?
That was the year he was hurt for the back half of the year. Nick Foles.
Yeah, Nick Foles.
That man.
No. But listen, though, Carson Wentz was a crucial part of them getting to that Super Bowl. He literally got injured when they were 11-2. What are you talking about?
He had 0 playoff wins.
It doesn't matter. That's an 11.
I mean, when you can plug Nick Foles in, it clearly like the quarterback wasn't a crucial
Anyway,
part of that.
I'm saying
offense.
Matt Ryan's an
Anyway,
upgrade.
No,
and
no,
he
no.
doesn't. He doesn't.
That's what we're not gonna do because
Maybe
he
he
ended up
doesn't.
winning the Super Bowl.
And all I'm saying is the Colts increase they go a little bit more pass heavy. Not they're definitely a run first team, a little more pass heavy, and you cannot run the ball on the same down that you throw the ball. That's a fact. That is a scientific fact.
clarify, I think that my volume argument, and I guess I didn't say this, my volume argument is based on the upgrade of Matt Ryan over Carson Wentz, right? I think JT's volume will drop. That's the only argument I have, really. And
It's
I guess
not though. That's the thing. It's not. It's most definitely not. And I wouldn't even say that's truly an upgrade. I feel like, yeah, Matt Ryan has an MVP, but the man doesn't have a ring. Like,
how many?
So I kind of agree with both. I agree that he's not actually an upgrade, but they went and got him because he's a perceived upgrade. So they're going to throw more, but they're going to throw more. So JT's volume drops, but I still don't think that Matt Ryan's like going to make huge things happen passing.
The disrespect for Matt Ryan on this podcast is just outrageous. But
Carson Wentz has the ring. That's all I'm saying.
I think we've wrapped on Jonathan Taylor, right?
Yeah. All right. So who's up? Is that you?
It'd be me. So going in to my pick to lead rushing yards for the NFL 22-23 season is none other than Dalvin Cook. Another semi-hot take here. This man's kind of being left for dead when it comes to rushing attempts. He's a first-round running back if you talk about fantasy, but most people consider him like an extra special asset when it comes to PPR leagues because he receives the ball a lot. And that's true. He's a great receiver. But similar to Debo, I don't care how this man gets the ball in his hands. He's just an ultra ball carrier. He can take any play to the house at any time. And as long as that ball gets handed backwards to him first, those are rushing yards. So that's all I'm concerned about. All right. We've already talked about how Minnesota is a good offense. They're going to move the ball. There's going to be opportunity there. Opportunity is what matters the most, even more than just strictly volume. Opportunity, the quality of the volume, things like that. They're going to get first downs. They're going to move the chains. They're going to stay on the field. They're going to score a lot of touchdowns. Dalvin Cook is going to do more than his fair share. I'm actually happy that I don't have to defend the Justin Jefferson take here, even though he's a good receiver. This goes perfectly with Justin Jefferson not being the top receiving option in the league because Dalvin Cook is too big of a weapon for the same offense. Dalvin Cook eats every single year. I think the only thing that you could hold against him is some injury he had back in college, which he's far removed from at this point. So I don't want to hear about that. He's a top tier running back. He's as talented as anybody. He's going to get as much opportunity as anybody on a much more proven offense than Jonathan Taylor, and a more proven offense than John's pick without spoiling who that will be. This guy's going to get a ton of volume, ton of opportunity, which is the word of the day. And he is efficient. He's going to kill it. Dalvin Cook, you can book it. You can cook it. You got to cook the books. He's going to lead in rushing.
The wordplay could.
I don't know. I had to do it. I had to do something with that.
I mean, look, you chose, I guess, my de facto favorite running back in the league. I have him in fantasy. He's on my favorite team. I would love to see him lead. I would love to be wrong in this debate. I just happen to think the game script will go the other way more often, right? Like, so it's the inverse of your argument against Justin Jefferson. I think that Justin Jefferson will lead in receiving. Dalvin Cook will be 4 or 5 in rushing. That's really it. That's all I got.
All right, I'll hit that real quick. Inverse of the Justin Jefferson argument, but we were on opposite sides of that already. That's kind of my take. Is they're going to be
we already had this argument. I think
they're going to be a good offense. They're going to put up a lot of points. What do you do when you're ahead in the NFL? If you're dumb, you keep throwing the ball like crazy so that you can turn the ball over and lose the game. Or if you're smart, you can hand. Nobody's arguing Dalvin Cook's not a top 5 running back. You can hand your top 5 running back the ball and ground and pound the game out.
If the Vikings are so good and they're going to be blowing teams out, where's their championship?
I think this year they're going to.
Did you not make that same argument against Kirk Cousins earlier? Huh?
Well, they're a playoff team. They're not.
Yeah, that doesn't. I don't think they're gonna be blowing teams out and like having to run the ball or like running the clock out in the fourth quarter that often.
I mean, if you're blowing teams out, you can do whatever you want. If you're ahead by 1 score, you got to be careful. You got to run the ball. and they're going to be a playoff team, I think. I mean, we'll do playoff predictions on a separate episode, but they've been a playoff team. They were a playoff team last year. Take the postseason out because I don't believe this team is going to be good in the postseason. But against average teams, the Vikings are a good team. So I actually think, just to tie a knot on it, Justin Jefferson's the one who's not game script proof. He's going to get game scripted out of games. Dalvin Cook is the one who is game script proof. He'll be a part of the receiving game, but the biggest part of the rushing game, when they're ahead in games, they're going to pull the trigger on running the ball more. Cook the books.
Okay. Q, what do you got?
I'll have to say that, I guess a good focus here is looking at yards per attempt. I think, guys like Jonathan Taylor, guys like Nick Chubb, Joe Mixon, like they do more, with the ball per attempt than guys like Dalvin Cook. Granted, last year specifically, Dalvin Cook had significantly lower attempts than Jonathan Taylor. And I think, just making the comparison, let's say Dalvin Cook gets more attempts this year. I don't think he will be above even like 1,400. Like I think he'll be around that, but I don't think he'll be above like 1,500. And I think whoever is going to get number one this season is going to be like 1,700 realistically. So yeah, that's kind of how I feel about that. Yeah, I'll try not to make too many arguments on the case of Jonathan Taylor because I don't want to make this about him. But
So your case against Dalvin Cook is that you think it's going to be Jonathan Taylor?
No, I'm not saying it's going to be Jonathan Taylor. I'm just saying like he, just taking a look at yards per attempt, like he doesn't really deliver like other running backs do.
So interesting. Sure, compared to the limited sample size we have with Jonathan Taylor, he does have higher yards per carry. That's fair. They both have elite numbers, though. So, I mean, I'm not too worried with that. They're both Dalvin Cook is over 4.5. He's 4.7 yards per carry over the course of his entire career. And speaking about career totals, Dalvin Cook has more 1,000-yard rushing, not all-purpose yards, because he's the receiving back. That's the whole thing everybody wants to say. Dalvin Cook has more 1,000-yard rushing seasons under his belt in the NFL than Jonathan Taylor has seasons in the NFL. So my argument here is that Dalvin Cook, we've seen him do it repeatedly. The offense is proven. We've yet to see that in Indy. I shouldn't make the case against Jonathan Taylor. The case is for Dalvin Cook. This is an offense that's going to work. I believe they take at least a mini step forward again. They're going to be a playoff team. Dalvin Cook is going to be the main thing to push the offense forward. He's going to have 1,000 yards rushing. We know that. He does it every year. How many yards over that is what we really are talking about. And, Jonathan Taylor only has one season of rushing yards more than Dalvin Cook's last 3 seasons. So that's, I guess, his third place year and Taylor's second place year are pretty much a push, I guess. So actually, yeah, that's
Dalvin Cook's best year. Dalvin Cook's best year is 2020 when he had 1,500. So, yeah, and then he went from 1,500 to 11 or 1,200. So
yeah, and he was right at that 5 yards per carry mark there. So we know this man, just by those stats, even the more you use him, the more effective he becomes, the more efficient he becomes with more volume. That's an elite characteristic for running backs in the NFL. So yeah, appreciate you pointing that out.
I mean, I personally feel like Jonathan Taylor is just more skilled than him. So in 2020,
that's the eye test, the film test, right? Like you just think he's better.
That's fine. But also if we're comparing best seasons, if we're comparing last year to Dalvin Cook's 2020, it's just Jonathan Taylor looks tremendously better.
Yep. Tremendously better. He's done that once. He had a great season for sure.
Gotcha.
For sure.
I mean, I'm comparing it. I'm not even saying last year for Dalvin Cook. I'm saying Dalvin Cook's best season in the NFL. We're
Yeah, but he's
comparing the
had
best
multiple
season
great
to
seasons.
Jonathan Taylor's last year, and Jonathan Taylor just absolutely runs circles around Dalvin Cook, if I'm being honest. And they had the same volume too. So there's no like excuse there either.
Gotcha.
Taylor had quite a few more carries, but
I mean, he had 10 to 15 more carries than
5 yards a
Dalvin
clip.
Cook.
That could be the difference.
And
maker.
we're talking about 300-400 yard difference.
We shall see.
So okay, so we got me still. I was just gonna say, Q, you definitely skew younger in your you skew younger or more recent, like who had a good last season. All right, so I will take it. I think I'll give my pick and then we can get into scoring and wrap up. So the person that I think will be the yards leader in the 2022-2023 season, I think I have the most difficult argument personally, because I know there's like one glaringly obvious thing about this person. So my man is Derrick Henry. The reason I have Derrick Henry is specifically attempts per game. When the guy is in the game, he touches the ball way more than anyone else we're talking about here. Like last year, he averaged like 27 attempts per game. And the other two aren't even getting 20 last year. He's averaged over 20 for the last 3 years. The biggest downside to Derrick Henry is that he's not always in the game. He misses games. The other reason I like Derrick Henry, I'll address that. But the other reason I like Derrick Henry is I want someone who is in a run-heavy offense that has not a lot of passing weapons, that has not a great passing quarterback, but is in a division where the run defense is a little soft, right? Like they can know that Derrick Henry's going to get the ball and it doesn't matter because the defense is just kind of soft in that division. So yeah, that's my case for Derrick Henry. Now, will he be in the game? Will he miss games? Yeah, he might miss games, but this is my outside shot, right? Like I think I've got the most difficult argument because he might miss some games, but if Derrick Henry misses no games or minimal games, this is the guy who will lead in rushing yards. That's my opinion. That's where I'm at.
All right. Q, you or me?
I'll go first. I think you definitely have the hardest argument based off the fact that, Derrick Henry most likely will miss some games this season. But that alone just isn't strong enough for me. I just think, I'm going to take a reliable pick over, someone that might possibly, undoubtedly, probably is out of their prime, and especially dealing with very significant injuries. And we all know how running backs are. Once they get injured, it's tremendously harder for them to come back and like do the same numbers that they were doing before the injury. So with that alone, I just don't know. I don't know if he'll be able to put up, number one numbers that he was, doing a couple years ago when he I think got 2,000 yards in a season, or even just in terms of volume. I don't think he'll be able to handle that much volume, even if he does come back and play every game. I don't think he'll be able to take over 300 attempts. Well, maybe he'll do 300 attempts, but I don't think he'll be able to do over 320, 350. No way.
I got you. So if there is an exception to the rule of they don't come back as strong, it's Derrick Henry. He misses games every season. Now, did he miss more games last season? Yes, he had a more serious injury last season, but the man led rushing yards in both the last 2 seasons before that. So yeah, I'm going to guess even if he just misses some games, like a normal amount of games for Derrick Henry, he still leads.
Okay, let me just.
I get you. Let
me just counter that.
There's a big question mark here, and that's why it's a difficult argument. But I don't think.
Yeah.
I think the same thing. It's similar to Deebo Samuel. If there's a dark horse that people are like, oh, he probably won't because he's too old. It's yeah, but if you kind of look at it on paper, I don't think that he's that much of a dark horse.
For me, let me just do a super quick rebuttal to that. if he misses even like 2 games, even 1 game, he's out of the running for me. And that's
It's pretty
just
fair to
normal
say
for
about
him, and
all of
he's
them,
got
though.
it before. Yeah,
That's
all of
fair
them
to
will
say about
probably
all
miss
of them.
some games. Yeah.
Well, I
If
mean,
Taylor
of course,
misses 2 games,
but
he's
like,
out too.
yeah, but no, I'm saying like he's specifically dealing with injuries. So
Right,
like,
specifically more likely to. I agree. I'm
and
just
load
saying.
management is like that's like an actual case for him. But anyone could get injured and they would be out of the running. But I'm just saying, like Derrick Henry, he's already taking load management. So that alone is like enough for me to be like, you're not gonna be in the top running. I'm sorry. Like it's just not gonna happen.
All right, let me get to this. Unless you wanted to reply to that, John. I feel
No,
like it's only fair
that's
that
fine. I already made my reply. The dude misses games every season, and he's led before.
Okay. Man, I feel like this episode, I don't agree with your guys' assessments here as far as like who the consensus is here, because I think I had this in the same order as far as like the football community. I think Q took the 2 most obvious picks in this episode, and I thought you had the 2 second most obvious picks, John. That's how I would look at it. I think I had the dark horses in both arguments because Derrick Henry has done this before. Derrick Henry is the only running back in this discussion who's had 2,000 yards on the ground. That's huge. Derrick Henry, if they were all the same age, Derrick Henry runs away with this argument. So his age does play a factor. His pre-existing injuries, plays an enormous factor. I don't want to declare somebody's going to come out and get injured, though. That obviously you got to take a little ding for that. We've all acknowledged it. Let's move on from that. I actually, real quick, I give you props on definitely the worst passing options for any of the teams we're talking about right now. So yeah, they are going to feed him the rock. I disagree actually that he'll have any load management. I don't think we've ever seen Derrick Henry being used in that way. I think if he's in the game, they just give him the ball. I do think, though, that you can expect the efficiency to be there on a per-touch basis like it was 2 years ago when he did have 2,000 yards. He's more than likely not going to do that. He's only done that once, right? So he's probably not going to do that. Could he still lead in rushing yards? Absolutely. Derrick Henry is a monster. But I don't know. My bet is he does miss a few games for one. But even with that, even if he did play all 16, I don't know that he's going to be able to be the most efficient runner. Probably the biggest reason that I'm surprised nobody's brought up, whether it was you getting ahead of it, John, or you bringing it up, Q, against him, is what are defenses preparing for when they play the Titans? Are they preparing for fearsome Ryan Tannehill with his plethora of receiving excellence? No. They are preparing to put 8 men in the box, maybe 8, maybe 9 on some plays in the box, and you go get that man. And he's going to be hard to tackle. But, I mean, if you got that many people in the box, you can gang tackle him every time. And if nothing else, that's going to force the issue when it does come to efficiency, if not injuries before that. So that'd be my main thing against it is, man, this is the one player out of the 3. When defenses see that they're game planning for him, that's the whole game plan is stop Derrick Henry. And they'll be able to do it this year.
I get you. Structurally, no defenses are preparing for the Titans. They're preparing for the Titans that week, but they're not like going and getting personnel to prepare for the Titans.
Teams within the division are definitely making some roster
not the
decisions.
Titans, though. Yeah, I mean, like but like not the Titans. Like no good teams are preparing for the Titans. You know what I mean? Nobody in the AFC who's like got any kind of playoff hopes or like deep run hopes is really preparing for the Titans. So like they're not like that. That's why, right? Like they're going to do it that week. But they're not like, oh, we need to really put together a run stop defense because this Derrick Henry guy is going to take the Titans to a Super Bowl. The other point is I don't think he doesn't need 2,000 yards to lead in rushing.
No,
he did it.
I didn't mean to say that either.
He led rushing with 1,500 yards, right? Like I'm not saying 1,500 is what is gonna get the crown, but ultimately, the reason I think I have the most difficult argument is because it's very obvious that he is the highest injury risk, and if he is injured for, let's say, I'm going to say more than 3 games, right, 3 or 4 games, then yeah, he probably will not win the rushing crown. But he gets so many more attempts. He gets like 20, he gets like 30 to 50% more attempts than the other 2 running backs per game than the other 2 running backs that we're talking about. So he can play 30 to 50% less games and get the same number of attempts, will he be as efficient? No, I think he plays 20% less games, but gets 35% more attempts per game. And that's enough to get him the rushing yards crown.
One more point before I forget, just so we don't lose more credibility as a show. Since that happened, since 1,500 yards won't do it in this category, no matter who gets 1,500 yards, because we've added a whole nother game to the season in the NFL since that happened, since people were leading with 1,500 yards. So that's not going to do it for anybody, which when you factor that into kind of an extra knock against Derrick Henry is more opportunity to get injured. If he's barely hanging on for the whole season, it's one more he's got to hang on.
One more game.
You know, which is tough. I think even in your scenario where he does win, he's hanging in there, you know. Like he's got
in my scenario where he wins, he probably misses 2 games total.
I mean, maybe, but I'm saying even if he misses no games, he's not 100% healthy for even half the games. His running style. He's looking for contact.
I think hands down, if he misses no games, hands down, even if he's not 100% healthy, it's gonna be like, well, we got to give you the ball 30 times a game. So even if you average 3 yards, like you're still gonna get a bunch of rushing yards.
He's just not gonna be able to handle the lows that he was able to handle. Like 17 game season, like it's just nah. There's no way.
Can I say something real quick as we go into grading here? This one probably the best for the content, I think, because this one we all had a different flavor to our argument. I felt like me and Q and the receiving one were. I mean, it's so similar.
Basically, you're making the same argument for 2 different people. Yeah.
Kind of. And I was like, I can't tear down Q's argument well enough, or else I can't make my own argument later. So that was tough. With this one, we had 3 different prototypes of running backs, essentially.
For sure. Moving into the grading. So how do we want to do this? Do we want to grade Q first this time?
I think we've graded in order of presentation so far. So, you want me to go first on grading them, or you, John?
You go first. Yeah, you went second last time. You went second last time we graded Q.
Sure. Yeah. So Jonathan Taylor. I'll try to be brief here, not go too long. Had this gone, and this is giving you credit, honestly, Q. Had this gone in a different order, this would have been my pick. I'm not going to lie to you. Like, you know, this would have been the guy I picked. Same way I picked Tom Brady first. I got the first pick in that argument. I took the most obvious guy. I think that's what you did here. It's the only smart move to do. And I think the odds of you being right are the highest. I said it. But running back is so unpredictable. The way we were just tearing down Derrick Henry for like he could get injured and miss games. The reality of the NFL is running backs miss games. Like they do. Yeah. And even if they don't miss games, no running back is 100% healthy after like 2 or 3 weeks. They're all a little banged up. Maybe Derrick Henry a little more disproportionately. So Jonathan Taylor, if they force feed him that many carries, if they try to do too much with him, that'd be my biggest worry for him, honestly. And I think that's a vulnerability there. But your argument was sound. I got to go ahead and give you a pretty decent score here. I'm thinking I'm going to go ahead and give you a 7. I think that's the highest score I've given anybody so far.
That is definitely the first 7 that I've seen in this.
Dang.
Let's go.
Well, this is now that I wish I would have went first so you could have equalized it.
Nah,
but I'm going to stay consistent. I decided beforehand what I was going to give Q on this one. I'm going to stay consistent with it. Same thing. If I had first pick in this round, I would have also picked Jonathan Taylor. I said when I made an argument that okay, with Matt Ryan, he gets less attempts. I mean, but the guy led in attempts last year. So it's like I really don't have very many arguments against Jonathan Taylor. And the only place you would get docked would be how difficult of an argument it was. I think you made good rebuttals to the other 2, right? So it's tough to say, oh, I made a really good argument for the favorite, because it's the favorite. How good of an argument can you make? But you made really good rebuttals to the other 2, and I have you as a 7 as well, honestly.
You had a lot of ammo for this argument, and you didn't leave any of it in the chamber. So
yeah,
nicely done.
I still got more if y'all want to keep going. If y'all want to keep going, I still got more.
Q's like, I own the running back category.
I'm telling you, Jonathan Taylor is going to be number 1 this season. But
okay. All right. So should we move to Casey?
Yeah, I went next, so that sounds right.
All right. Q, you go first, or who went first against Casey last time, or grading Casey last time?
I don't remember.
It was me.
I don't remember.
Okay, you go first.
but I will go first. Okay, Casey. So for my friend Dalvin Cook, I got to give you. Oh,
Do you agree that? Do you think that I'm the dark horse here, or was it Derrick Henry? Because that one shocked me when you guys were talking like that.
I think both of you guys are dark horses, if I'm honest. And if you want me to explain why, I can. But if you want me to just give you a score, I can do that as well.
For Mike,
I
bro.
mean, take 30 seconds. Yeah.
Okay, 30 seconds to why they're both dark horses. Um, Dalvin Cook never, has he been that number one guy? Never. He's been close once, but he's never been that number one guy. Derrick Henry, on the other hand, has been that number one guy. Um, and if we're making comparisons, I think Jonathan Taylor is where Derrick Henry was when he had that breakout season, when he got number one. That's why I think Jonathan Taylor is right now. So Jonathan Taylor in 3 years might be a completely different story, but I think he's like slowly getting to that point where he's like ready to just like go off. Whereas Derrick Henry has been like, his bones are hanging by like threads at this point. So I think he's just way out of his prime. He's beat up. He's like, yeah, it's like I'm trying to think of a running back in the past.
Derrick Henry has bruises in his bone marrow.
Bro, he's gonna show up to your house and be like, "What'd you say to me?"
Yes.
Like, he's like past his prime. I think. Well, how old is Derrick Henry? Probably Q's age. Like,
dude, he's gonna grab
Yeah,
a couple
no.
of helmets and Aaron Donald you.
No, seriously, like a couple more big hits, and now we're in the doctor's office talking about CT. So, like, let's be careful. Derrick Henry is for sure getting of age. But yeah, I think Casey, if I were to give you a score, difficulty, I think you're there. But in terms of like argument, your argument just didn't feel like as strong as like your Tom Brady argument. Like the confidence, like I can tell you're confident that he's gonna get number one, but truly deep down in your heart, I can tell he's not gonna get number one.
Dalvin Cook is not the greatest running back of all time. I said it. I agree. Like Tom Brady is.
With that being
okay,
said,
what you got? Give us a number, Q.
I'm gonna have to give you a 5.5.
Oh my gosh.
I'm gonna have to give you a 5.5.
This just got interesting. This just got really interesting. I thought you were gonna go higher than that. I decided beforehand on both of you what I was going to.
Yeah, the equalization game is a little bit.
I decided beforehand on both.
No, it's not. This is
not here.
What I'm saying is I'm not equalizing. I decided beforehand.
I'm saying not deciding a little bit ahead of time is like a little disingenuous.
What I was going to give Casey. I don't think Casey, and this is a biased opinion, but I don't think Casey made a better case for Dalvin Cook than I made for Justin Jefferson. And based on that benchmark, I'm giving you the same score you gave me for Justin Jefferson, which I think was a fair score. But like, it just, both of us are like, well, I think he gets game scripted out. I think he gets game scripted out. 5.5.
I'm at 10. You were giving me a 10.
5, Mike, 5.5. Yeah. And this just got very interesting with the overall scores because I am tracking that. But all right, what you guys got for me?
Go ahead, Q.
Oh, I gotta go first again. I thought.
Okay, you need a little breather. John on Derrick Henry. What is there to say about that? Man, I liked the style to a certain degree of your argument. At least you tried to get ahead of some of the points you knew were coming, which I think is wise. At least, I think that in the true like debater fashion, I don't think you're using your full ability to like craft that. You're using like half of the argument that somebody would use against you and getting in front of half of it because you don't want to make the best case against yourself. I get it. So with that, I'm like, you get some points, but not full points for like conceding. Like, hey,
There's some time sensitivity too. I mean,
you did give up that you did say he probably misses 2 games in the year, which if he misses 2 games in the year, I think his odds actually drop a lot. And that's probably one of my biggest hurdles to seeing you being like very right about this. Because I think he has to miss like a maximum of 1 games. Because probably somebody misses 1 or fewer games who's one of the elite backs, and that's going to be who does it probably. So because of that, and because of what I said, which I was surprised nobody brought it up. I think you should have got ahead of this one too. What do defenses prepare for? It's Derrick Henry. They lost their number one receiving option. I forgot to mention that. That's the only reason why last year you could have not said it as much, because they lost A.J. Brown, who was an enormous threat in the passing game. So they have no no receiving threats really to speak of. And I think your rightness is pretty far off, but I also don't think the difficulty of argument should be fully there, because at least the way I see it, I see that as like the football community would still see him as a really viable option. And I just kind of disagree with that. So based off those, I did not think about what I wanted to grade you first. That's why I asked you to go first. So I've been stalling. I want to give you, I gave Q a 5.5 for his argument. Or no, I gave Q a 7. Sorry, read the wrong thing. John, I want to give you I think it's fair to say you deserve a 5.5. I think that's where it is. That's what I'm sticking with.
okay.
That's
what you got, Q?
Okay, John, listen here. I think, going back to what Casey said about, bullets in the chamber, I think you left some bullets in the chamber with this one. You were trying to get ahead of some of our counter arguments, I felt, by saying if he missed two games, then, he could still be in the running. And I just don't believe that's true. For one, Derrick Henry, without a doubt, is not going to be able to handle the 300 plus at the efficiency that he was doing it. That's just like, I feel everyone has to agree. I feel most football fans would say he's in the running for sure, as being like one of the top running backs. But obviously that's just because of his past. With that being said, in when he had that 1500 season, I forget which year it was exactly. I think it was like 2018 or 2019. I think he missed 1 game, but with that 1 game, obviously he still had the most carries that season, and finished at number 1 passing. And then when he had the 2000, or sorry, the 2000 plus yard season, he that season he didn't miss a single game. And he by far had the most carries. So, with that being said, like that's just like a one-off season, I think, where he was just like put his all into it. And then obviously after that season, then we start seeing like his bones really might have some bruises. So when you have a season like that, it's just really tough. It's really tough to come back and do it again. And actually, I feel for the rest of your career to even continue on like that. So, like I said, age is a big factor. Load management is a big factor. And these are just like innately going to affect your argument. And, I can appreciate you trying to get ahead of it, but, I just think he's not going to be that number 1 guy, regardless of the fact. And I would have liked to have seen you kind of, provide more substance around like, okay, what can the Titans do to really, take advantage of either, it's a hard argument obviously, but what can they really do to take advantage of like these, factors that are given to them? Like, I mean, he's older, he's a good strong running back, but like, what are they going to do? Are they going to give him like that volume? Are they not going to give him that volume? Is it going to be like these one-off situations? They're going to be trading, their second stream running back? for him and just playing him, kind of like what Green Bay did with Aaron Jones. And what's his name?
AJ Dillon.
AJ Dillon. Are they gonna do
So
what
what are
Green
you
Bay
gonna
did?
give John's argument, Q?
I know I'm rambling, but like,
Yeah.
yeah. But yeah, okay. So I think I'm gonna give John a. Uh, I don't think. Yeah, I'm gonna have to give John. I'm gonna have to give John a 5. I'm gonna have to give John a 5.
Okay.
I
If
think
if
you
I
could
could
have
say,
done
you and I brought
more.
up
The all
same
right.
point. I think you shot yourself in the foot. I think if you don't say that thing where he can miss 2 full games and still do it, I think if you just left that part out,
Math. I didn't say that. Math says that based on the average attempts per game.
I
But
would have
the scores are in.
omitted
The
it
scores
from
are in.
my.
This is fine. The scores are in. Not giving me points for difficulty of argument is ridiculous because polls say Dalvin Cook has by far and away the most votes for who will lead the rushing yards, followed by Jonathan Taylor, with Derrick Henry, Nick Chubb, and other taking third in votes. So not giving me points for difficulty of argument is ridiculous in my opinion. However, the scores are in, and the overall final scores are also in. I finished with 20. What do we got? 23 plus 10 and a half. So 34 and a half total points in third and last place. Q finished in second with 37 points. Casey also finished in second with 37 total points. So both of you guys got second and first. You guys tied.
Just gonna say another way you could say that is we tied for first, which is
yeah, I know, but it would have been less suspenseful.
Yeah,
it would have been less on brand.
Right. So here we would go. Went to the polls for rushing. Dalvin Cook 57%. I think that's like 38 total votes. Jonathan Taylor 27 total votes. Derrick Henry like 18 total votes. Anyone who was left out of the mix in our discussion here, you guys think that you're seeing here, or
hold on. You can't. Yeah. This can't be how we shape difficulty of argument because there is no NFL wide.
It's fine. We can move on. The scores are in.
Just so it's consistency. If Dalvin Cook is involved, if you replace other with Dalvin Cook in that other poll, Dalvin Cook gets the fewest amount of votes. He's behind Nick Chubb probably to most people. He stands out in the NFC.
98 votes. 98 votes in the NFC poll. 67 votes in the AFC poll. Look, we split it into NFC and AFC to include as many people as we could. So we can only go by total votes. We have no idea what would have happened in a different scenario.
I mean, to be fair,
the gut check there. I mean,
I think if we were to start a poll right now, if we put those 3 in there, you would see, like, yeah.
I think it would go JT, Dalvin Cook, Derrick Henry if we put those 3 in there, but we can't. We can't make a world where that happened.
I think Dalvin Cook would come in behind Nick Chubb to most people. This is similar to when I said Tom Brady. I'm like, yeah, I picked Tom Brady to be the leader in passing yards. But if you said, poll, does the passing leader come from the NFC or AFC? I might say AFC just because there's so many more options that could do it.
That's a different poll. Here. That's a different poll than putting like Josh Allen in there, you know.
Totally.
So anybody who deserves mention in the rushing conversation that we did
absolutely
Nick Chubb for
sure. 4 standouts. I was on the fence the whole time about Cook or Chubb because I think I had last pick in this one. And yeah, I was totally torn. And honestly, I might have made the wrong choice. Otherwise, I probably could have won this thing flat out because maybe I could have made a better argument for Nick Chubb.
Here we go. Into receiving yards. None of us took Ja'Marr. So
I think Joe Mixon too, by the way. Sorry to add. Just wanted to add that.
You also think Joe Mixon.
I took him in first round of drafts.
Right. Yeah. So. No, that's valid. Basically, anyone who is like a really strong running back that's not in a committee, I think is maybe a top 10 rusher. You know,
Joe Mixon's a tough one to make an argument for because the they're
passing game
strong so efficiently, so good. They're going to lean into it. And honestly, the reason against Ja'Marr Chase is because there's quite a few good targets there. T. Higgins is going to eat into his target share, and Ja'Marr Chase is a little bit just a prototype. He's a little bit more on the Justin Jefferson side. He's not so much the volume. It's like deep targets downfield. Sure, he'll get a ton of yards when he does catch the ball, but he won't have as many receptions as Cooper Kupp. Or probably even Deebo Samuel at the end of the year.
I think that my 7.5 to Casey on Deebo Samuel is completely justified by this poll. I think the difficulty of argument was really high, but of anyone who is, he received the least votes out of everybody. 92 votes in a poll. Again, that this poll got like 258 votes total. So but of anybody, like Casey actually convinced me, like, okay, if there's a dark horse that's going to do it, it is Debo. So I don't think my 7.5 was wrong there. I think, way out of line to give. What did you give him there? 5? Way out of line. Did you give him a 5? I think
that was the equalizer. That was the equalizer.
That was the equalizer. Well, hey, that's how the game works. That's how the game works.
No, I mean, to be fair,
I don't believe he goes 5.
I think I got shafted on the running backs argument based on the polls. I think Casey got shafted on the receivers argument based on.
By the way, we've never explained this. This is why it's called triple cross, because you go like, oh, karma's a bitch. It'll come back around. We literally triple cross this episode. We go
then
like, hey,
you went and gave him a 7 in the next round.
I mean, bro, to be fair, my argument was pristine. Like, I'm so sorry. Like,
so did you though, John.
Like, you guys made my argument for me, and that's why I had to give you guys such low scores this round. Like, I would have loved to have given you guys each a 6, but like, I just felt like it. Huh?
Sorry, the award for the best line of the podcast is right there.
No, I'm just being honest. Like, you guys, your argument for Derrick Henry just was not there for me. Like, it wasn't doing it for me. Like, you were saying, like, oh, if he misses 2 games,
John's weakest
like,
point
I
on the
get, like,
episode
he's
by
old.
far
Like, it's just like
was
you
his case
saying
against your pick though. That John, what you said against his Jonathan Taylor pick, I was like, I don't think you can count any of that as negative. Even like you just
supplemented. It was like your case against Russell Wilson. Like you didn't make one.
That was a tactic. I was trying to 8-mile you. Okay, like it.
Yeah.
Arguably,
but then you didn't get. But then you didn't get to the. You only did the first half of it.
I tried. I did a little.
No. Okay. So I think if there's somebody here who we didn't mention, I think it's probably Devontae. The question mark is the question mark is Derek Carr, right? And that's why none of us picked him. But he's a very good receiver. I mean,
I put Adams and Hill just so in the same category. They both signed huge new contracts, switched teams in the offseason, definite downgrades at quarterback. I would put, I mean, if you gun to my head said who gets more receiving yards, Devontae Adams or Tyreek Hill, I have no idea who to say. Devontae Adams for sure gets more receptions. The Tyreek Hill gets more yards per reception, almost without a doubt. So what do we do there? I'd say Jamar Chase is the one who didn't get representation in this argument.
In this argument, that's the obvious one, but he did win the poll with the higher amount of votes. Anyone else? I think not listed. Do you think should maybe have some representation here
for receiving?
You guys want a hot take? You want a hot
Diggs?
T Kelsey in the comments. Diggs,
I was just gonna say that's Travis Kelsey would be the hottest take, but
Travis Kelsey is an insane take, but I think he could low key do it.
I think he will lead all tight ends.
100,000%
at all. He has for the last
without T Hill, yeah,
that's the whole thing. But Diggs is the one who really did. He probably should have been put in here somewhere, but like it's tough. That AFC.
Well, you wanted Debo in the polls, which different
conference.
To be fair, we included Debo instead. Yeah, it is a different conference, but we could have structured the polls differently if we wanted to.
It's tough.
To be fair, we knew Casey, because we know Casey's going to make the case. We want to see how many votes Debo gets, right? Like it makes it easier for us to kind of do this afterwards. So
Diggs actually probably, if I couldn't have Debo and I can't remember who was already off the board. Yeah, I think I picked last in this one, actually. Maybe I didn't pick last.
I think you picked last in running backs, didn't you?
Oh, no. I didn't pick last in this one. I just wanted Debo, just because he's Debo.
You picked first in this one, but
I don't think it was first. Debo. I think it might have been Cooper Kupp, I don't know what happened anymore, honestly.
You picked first in quarterbacks, but it was like, you did.
Yeah, if Kupp and Jefferson are off the board and I don't want to pick Debo, I probably would have gone to Diggs actually instead of like Jamar Chase.
I could get behind that. I probably would do the same thing. I might pick Chase actually. I wouldn't pick Devontae or Tyreek because too big of a question mark in the move.
Yeah, I would have given it. I mean, it's weird though how we grade because I probably would respect the balls of somebody who goes like, yeah, change of scenery. It's going to work out. Like Tua, Y'all don't know about Tua.
I don't know. He's about to be a top 5 QB.
I don't believe that, by the way. I was playing a character for a second there. Not a Tua truther. I think it'll be.
I think there's not much upside there because if you choose Devontae, right? Like, do you really get points for difficulty of argument? I know you guys didn't give me points for Derrick Henry, right? Like, if you choose,
I don't think that I don't think you deserved it for that. I'd be honest with that part at least. I don't think you do. Derrick Henry can do it. He's done it before.
I mean, if he can, then why am I so far away from being right? You know what I'm saying? Like, there's no balancing factor.
Your
there.
argument just wasn't.
That's fine. The argument may not have been good. That's fine. We can move on from it.
Can I say one thing real quick?
I don't think that Devontae, like, I wouldn't pick him in this format because I wouldn't be confident that I was going to get any points for difficulty of argument from either of you on that, and I wouldn't be like confident that I was going to like get a high score for likelihood of being right either.
If it was receptions, who's going to have the most receptions? Maybe Devontae Adams would be one of my picks there for sure. But
of receivers,
quick, before I move off the Tyreek Hill thing with Tua and all that, can we just talk about real quick, like, just left-handed quarterbacks, like, gross, right? Like, if you're not Michael Vick, like, just switch, go throw with your right hand.
Just don't be a quarterback if you're left-handed.
Yeah, bro, go be a first baseman. That's what you're supposed to do if you're a lefty who's athletic. That's it.
I think that about basketball players too. I hate left-handed basketball players. They just look awful. They're just wrong-handed. You know, there's a right hand and a wrong hand, and the left hand's the wrong hand.
Yeah,
wow,
that's my hot take today.
On the Triple Cross podcast, we're all for treating left-handed people as second-class citizens. So.
Yes, they are. You know, unless we're talking about pitchers, that's the only time that they're. You know, Q, are you left-handed, by the way?
No,
I hope you're not.
Imagine
if you were like, F you guys.
Just getting silently grilled over here.
Oh my god, that'd be hilarious. You aren't, right?
No, he's correct-handed.
Right-handed.
Anyway, that's the show today, guys. Right? I think we could probably wrap up. Everybody, thank you for watching the Triple Cross podcast. Casey, you want to say all the YouTube things? You know them better than I do.
Sure. If you watch this far in, for sure you like the video because this one's been a long one. Hopefully you enjoyed it. We have fun doing it. So if you enjoyed it too, hit that like button. You know how to do it. Smash the like button, obliterate the like button, destroy that shit. All right. Also hit the subscribe button so that you are subscribed to the channel. That will help YouTube signal to other people that they should be watching our videos if they're like you, and then they can subscribe and pass it forward, pay it forward. Also hit the bell icon to get notifications for whenever we drop, whether it's a full episode of Triple Cross or one of our shorts. You'll get notified whenever we drop content onto the channel. And I know you want to see that. So go ahead and hit that bell icon. And I mean, do we have a sign off for the show? I mean,
no.
I'll say this.
Cross.
You got to cook the books.
Just Dalvin, cook the books.